once more with feeling. Welcome everyone to MS Office Hours. It is Thursday, November 13th. Let me please introduce our hosts.
Hello, everybody. My name is Heather Cox.
I'm Dwayne Hyatt. Welcome.
And we are so excited. Sergio and Leo are last minute amazing rescue presenters. When they came and said Copilot and Purview better together, I thought this is the perfect topic and the perfect group to share that with. So Sergio said he's got lots of screens going, so he's keeping his camera off. But Sergio, the show is all yours.
Excellent. Okay, well, let me send one last ping to Leo, who will be co-presenting with me.
I'm here.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, well, Heather, thank you for the warm introduction. I am joined here with Leo Ramirez. We do work with EDU as well as state local government. I am a senior data security solutions engineer. Leo Ramirez is a principal data security solutions engineer. He's also a mentor of mine. We are certainly glad to be here. Leo, I don't know if you want to say a few words before we get started.
No, thank you for the invite, Heather, and we're excited to be presenting this information to you and looking forward to getting through this with you.
So
go ahead, Sergio.
One of the things that's so interesting to me is, when we look at innovation and productivity gains with generative AI, there's always that security, right? And how is it going to work with the technologies? And I work mostly with CISOs and the security concerns that they're looking at, as well as compliance. And as they look ahead at their AI initiatives, there really is data security conversation that needs to take place. So I'm glad to present this information and kind of bring this story together where Copilot and Purview can work and kind of build that foundation as you look at AI ahead. One of the important things of looking at AI is really choosing that Gen AI platform, and asking the question, which Gen AI tool will shape your workflows, your systems, and your business culture? And the key considerations that we need to think about is what are those productivity gains and how will it drive efficiency and measure outcomes? From the security side of the house, we want to make sure that it protects sensitive data and ensures compliance, and governance enable that responsible and auditable AI use, and making sure it's the right cultural fit that will align with your organization's values, your readiness, and change. One of the things you'll hear in articles and webinars is the socket, but really asking, why does it matter and what is the socket? Well, the socket is the secure integration point for AI in your workflows and systems. And you can think of it as like that central hub for connecting AI to the business. But with that comes the security considerations that, again, we should think about, and make sure that it enforces governance and compliance, that it will protect sensitive data, and that it will enable responsible and transparent AI adoption. And this really all comes together when you can align the organization from CIOs to CDOs and CISOs in looking at their AI adoption plan and how are they going to bring it in to that organization's culture. One thing we should think about is Gen AI application clouds and the data boundaries, right? Where is the data processed and how is it stored? When we look at Gen AI applications like ChatGPT, Gemini, this processes data outside of your organization's service boundary. And when I'm speaking service boundary, I'm really taking that M365 cloud as a case in point, your SharePoint, your Teams, your OneDrive, and looking at that service boundary and when data may be leaving outside of your tenant to be processed in another cloud. Data may be stored or analyzed in external clouds, increasing risks of unauthorized access or loss of control. Maybe it's some sensitive data. And this can create the challenges for security teams, the compliance teams, and the data residency, and make it harder to ensure that sensitive information is protected and meets regulatory requirements. Now, I know this is mostly EDU, but I would imagine most of the regulations would align to some portion of the NIST frameworks, right? And if you look at the image there, you see the AI applications that are out there. You've got our Copilot, you've got Gemini, DeepSeek, ChatGPT, and these are applications that may be used today. That AI footprint in organizations are becoming more of a security conversation that I'm having today, and I'm sure Leo as well, as security teams are looking to make sure that they can manage that and make sure the sensitive data doesn't leave these service boundaries. So if we look at Copilot service boundary, and I won't go too far into the architecture, this is just an image of the Copilot chat architecture. But one thing that I would, ask that you walk away just kind of visualizing is that M365 service boundary, right? And this is part of the tenant. So as you think about like prompts, responses, large language models, and just how all that kind of comes together, right? It's within your service boundary. I work with a lot of government agencies. Many of them are in government cloud. So these boundaries are very important for them to make sure that they know where their data is being processed at. So, when we look at where is the data processed and stored for Copilot, Copilot for M365 and Copilot Chat process and stores data within your organization's tenant service boundary. Sensitive information remains protected inside of your trusted cloud environment. And this approach delivers strong security, compliance, and data residency advantages, right? Because you're looking at AI and all the productivity gains and innovation and all those cool things. We all want to go and get started. We want to start that envisioning process, but we can't forget that security foundation, because once we choose a good foundation of what we're going to get started with, that's where the magic happens. That's where we can really start innovating. The Copilot journey envisioning to frontier firm, right? I heard this mentioned earlier when you guys were just kind of talking there, but what does it mean to become a frontier firm? Microsoft uses this term a lot, but frontier firms are organizations that fully embed AI into their workflows and culture, leveraging feedback and innovation to drive measurable outcomes and continuous improvement. How are they going to rewrite what they're doing manually today? How can they envision a workflow that they do where there may be pain points, and how can they infuse some AI into it to better automate that, to allow the human interaction to work with AI and agentic AI? So some of the steps would be to start your envisioning sessions and define business use cases, enable the socket with Copilot for M365 and Copilot Chat, define your KPIs and your ROIs, and data security oversight with Purview features. And if you look at the image to the right there, that AI North Star envisioning, this usually happens from the business side as opposed to the security side of organizations, where they're kind of looking at what their manual process is and where AI can kind of come in and help their use cases to do more with AI. There you see leveraging Copilot licenses and Copilot Chat. Many organizations I work with, they may start with a subset of licensed Copilot, and then they look at the remainder of the organization and enable Copilot Chat, which has some differences that we probably won't go into here. But in short, it brings AI equity. If you're already licensed for license like A3, E3, G3, you can leverage it today. Report use case experience. This can be from the KPIs to the ROIs, or they can be the security concerns that get reported back to your security team. And what does the security team do to fix those issues? They leverage Purview data security, things like sensitivity labels, DLP, insider risk, and Leo will go into those. And as we prepare to kind of look at the security concerns, you can see on the bottom side, this is your traditional zero trust, protect applications, protect identities, protect endpoints, network, data, cloud, infra, right? That's traditional zero trust. The applications that we work with today, we want them to be zero trust. And when we talk about the M365 or the Azure cloud, it is built on a zero trust platform. But as we look at the Gen AI, there are new attack surfaces we're going to think about: prompts, responses, the AI orchestration. How is the data trained? What is the retrieval augmented generation data? Which models are being used, and how are the plugins and skills? What are they pointing to, and what are they defined as? And then if you look at the amplified risk, we have to think about data leaks, jailbreaks, indirect prompt injections, model vulnerabilities, and hallucinations. So as you can see, this goes beyond the zero trust, and these are the new risk surfaces that we need to consider. Now I'm going to tee this up for Leo and hand it over to you. Leo?
Thank you, Sergio. Excellent presentation, very valuable insights. And I'm going to just start here on the reason data classification is so important, especially as you're considering generative AI like Copilot for Microsoft 365, Copilot Chat, you name your Gen AI application. Here, I wanted to share with you this article on some best practices on how to improve your data classification strategy when it comes to those of you on the call in higher education. This is actually an article directly from EduCause, and it goes over some best practices on what other institutions are doing for governing their data. But these are some of the important reasons of why it should be important to you. Better cybersecurity for your risk assessments, managing your research data, just a few, records retention. And another big one, especially for higher education, is meeting compliance regulations like FERPA or HIPAA. So you'll have this with you to take. Very valuable insights in this article. So when we think about sensitivity labels, why are they so important? Well, sensitivity labels, these are like tags, if you will, that are applied to documents or emails. I'm looking at the chat. Whatever I'm saying related to data security, data classification, it also applies to K through 12, because any organization should have best practices in place for discovering where their sensitive data is. Is it in SharePoint, OneDrive, on-premise file repositories, users' workstations? And once you discover that data, you want to classify it according to its risk level, its category of risk. And that's why that article that you'll have in this deck from EduCause is so important. And these labels, you can think of them as signals. They once applied to content, they can be applied to files. They can also be applied to repositories in SharePoint or Teams channels, and you can put protection settings on them. So wherever that label and that file travels to, the label travels with it. And how this applies to Copilot is Copilot can read that label. And if there are protection settings on that label that's applied to the document or the email, if the user has access to that file or that email, then it can reference that file with Copilot. If they don't, well, Copilot also cannot reference it. Another key thing about these sensitivity labels is they can be applied either manually by an end user, or they can be applied automatically by the system. So you really want to do this automatically, because depending too much on the user to do the right thing, well, that in itself can be a risk, right? So, all right, a lot of customers, organizations, they struggle on protecting sensitive data. They don't know where to get started. We used to have a crawl, walk, run approach that guided you through this journey. Now we have this secure by default approach, and it's consists of 4 phases. There's foundational, which some simple things to get you started, and it focuses on new and updated content. So if a user creates a new file, it's automatically labeled with a label that has protection settings. If they modify a new file, it's automatically labeled. It also introduces a feature, or excuse me, an activity for data loss prevention. If a file or an email has a particular sensitivity label, you can configure the DLP rule to have that label defined as a condition. So if it's detected, it can't leave, that data can't leave the tenant. Then you have this managed approach, or excuse me, the managed phase, which goes, it focuses on high priority content, things like credentials, or maybe for those on the call, FERPA information, HIPAA data, automatically classifying that data at rest. Also configuring something in SharePoint, a default label that's on the library. So anything that's dragged into that library or created into that library automatically inherits a label. And then this goes on and on, optimize and then strategic. The strategic is really going beyond Microsoft 365. So targeting that on-premise data, or if you have resources in Azure, storage accounts, looking for sensitive data in those repositories and classifying that data as well. So this is the approach we're recommending for protecting data by default. All right, and now I'm going to go into a quick demo. I'm going to cover 3 things. One is data in use scenario for automatic labeling. And then I'm going to show you a scenario, what the benefits of why you want to have your your data labeled when Copilot references that data. What happens? You're going to see how the generated content automatically inherits the sensitivity label. You're also going to see a scenario where Copilot can't process a file because it's labeled. And just to answer the question in the chat from Jack, does automatic labeling require A5 licensing? The answer is yes. All right, so I'm going to go into the demo. First thing I'm going to do is open up a new Word document. This is a data in use. A user creates a new document. This one, because I'm using the secure by default approach, this new document already has a label called confidential. There's other options for labels that the user can manually apply, but we don't want that. We want, if a user puts sensitive information in this file, we want it to automatically be protected. And that's what I'm going to show you here. I'm going to copy some credit card numbers, some social security numbers, put it in this file, and notice what happens in just a few seconds. You see that? Automatically reclassified, relabeled this file to highly confidential. Also protected the file. This has some access controls. That's why the lock's there. Another thing it did is it provided this policy tip, letting the user know what happened. Sensitive information was detected, and that's why this file was automatically classified and protected. Also put a watermark here. So this is why you want to do automatic labeling. Another thing I'm going to show you is, what if a user, so I'm going to use Copilot to summarize a file. Actually, I'm going to do it this. I'm going to use PowerPoint. I'm going to say, create a presentation off of a file. Create a presentation from a file. You get a file in SharePoint. This one. I get the copy of the link. Provided that file has data in it. Right, yeah, that file doesn't have data. What I'm going to do now is show you what happens when a file, let's see, this file right here, this file has highly confidential. We're going to see why Copilot won't be able to process this file. When I ask it to summarize in here. All right, so Copilot recognized that the file has a sensitivity label, highly confidential. But it also says, I'm unable to provide information due to your organization's security policies that restrict access to this content. Why did this happen? Well, this happened because in Purview, I have a DLP rule, a DLP policy with a rule that says if there's a file that has a sensitivity label called highly confidential, all employees restrict Copilot from processing that content. Going back to what Sergio said, this we really want to protect sensitive information from being overshared. So this is one scenario that can address that situation, that use case. I'm going to go back to the slides, and we're going to talk about shadow AI and how to prevent data leaks. We also have a blueprint for that. So this blueprint takes you through 4 phases, similar to the other blueprint. How do you discover AI application? This is not just Copilot. This is other like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, if it's being used in your organization. These are the key activities. These are all clickable hyperlinks. And the outcome is unknown AI app usage, how it's being discovered. This phase focuses on blocking access to apps that are unsanctioned. And it walks you through those steps. Well, what does unsanctioned mean? Unsanctioned means that they're not approved by the organization. And that's what you can configure if you're using Defender for Cloud Apps. You can define which AI applications are sanctioned and which ones are unsanctioned. So these are the steps. And then this phase goes through securing your data for sensitive data that's not sent, to ensure that sensitive data is not sent to sanction AI apps. So again, going down that journey and then finally governing sensitive data. This is the audit interactions, doing e-discovery on prompts, investigating those prompts with insider risk management. But this blueprint focuses on 4 key areas within the Microsoft suite: Defender for Cloud Apps, Entra, Intune, and Purview. All right, so a lot of what we've been talking about is understanding, getting visibility on what's going into that AI application and also what's coming out. so that you can understand what kind of data security risk you have. What are users doing with Copilot or ChatGPT and Gemini? Well, we have a solution called Data Security Posture Management for AI that can help you discover where that sensitive data is so that you can create protection policies and DLP, insider risk management. It makes it easy because it provides you with recommendations so that you can create one-click policies that'll do things like create DLP policies to discover those sensitive prompts. Also, an automatic labeling policy. These are the recommendations: fortify your data security, discover unethical behavior in AI application. That's big. What if users are using Copilot to do things that violate code of conduct? Putting something in a prompt like how to commit suicide or how to conduct a cybersecurity attack. So all of these recommendations walk you through and actually create the policies needed to protect your data in those prompts. And then provides visibility through dashboards, what's going on in ChatGPT, Copilot, and other AI applications. And if users are referencing sensitivity labels in Copilot, it also gives you that visibility. And then the Activity Explorer has different activities that can be that you can filter on. For example, have there been any DLP rule matches for other AI applications like ChatGPT? And also, you can actually see the prompt. You can see the prompt and the response for Copilot interactions. And this is an example of what that would look like. Interaction details. Here's the prompt. If there's any sensitive information that was detected, that would also be surfaced. And with that, I'm going to close it here and let Sergio conclude with this slide.
Thank you, Leo. Yeah, and just kind of wrapping up, the whole Copilot plus Purview as a foundation, why would you want to build your foundation on Copilot or Purview? And Copilot delivers that intelligent productivity, use cases, while Purview will ensure security and governance. Together, they enable the organizations to confidently embrace Gen AI and innovate securely and progress towards that frontier firm status. And if you just look at that image there, we want our businesses to envision, we want them to find those AI North Stars as they bring in Copilot and do their testing, report the experience from KPIs to security concerns. And those security concerns, as Leo mentioned, will get addressed using Microsoft Purview. All right. Well, Heather, I'll hand it back to you.
Again, we are so thankful, Sergio, Leo. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you to the folks answering things in the chat. Appreciate that as well. We want to keep you safe, but using Copilot. And so remember, if you have any questions, you know where to come. This will get posted online very soon. And we will see you next week. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.